So welcome to the MGA Homeless Services Work Plan application. A couple of things I want to say first. One is that I want to call out Sean. Wave, Sean. Sean did all the formatting. This whole design is his, and he did a great job. And I really appreciated his help. The second thing is that everything that you've received so far is a draft. Remember that it's a draft. Until you find a document that says final on it, treat everything as a draft. Don't try to use this to get a head start on your application. This is an Excel document. It's set up so that we can draw information from particular cells to provide us with a database. We see 44 million in general fund and 6 million in DERF for the biennium. And what we requested is that this funding be embedded in our department budget so it becomes part of our biennial budget. So then we don't have to worry about it being one-time funds. They won't give it to us next biennium because it is our budget. And so what that means is that you don't have to worry about not having the funding in the next biennium. So when you fill out your work plan application, I want you to think big. Think as if you've got this money coming, more than you received this biennium. What you can do with that money. You can hire another case manager. You can hire a shelter manager. You can hire a data manager. You can obtain better data equipment. You can do all sorts of things with this money. So we need to spend it. We need to show the legislature that we are putting the money to good use. So I want you to start now and really examine what you need in your agency to increase your capacity, to help other people, help more people, and start planning for that process now. We're in a really exciting place. We've got the governor's homeless initiative, the statewide housing plan, the budget note work, the fiscal policies, and we have the interest of the legislature. That doesn't often happen all at one time. And so this really is our time. This is our time to make a difference. This is our time to examine what we can do that we aren't doing currently, and take those steps. Home TBA, ESG, ERA, and LERF, I think you can consider that you'll get about the same amount of funding that you did last biennium. EHA Vets, SHAP, and HSP will all have increased funding. So, this is our application. And I know it's really hard to see, but what you're seeing up here is what you have in your hard copy. So if you can follow along. This first page that you see is actually, if you can look at the tab, it's the work plan entry tab that shows up on your front page. And so there are buttons where you can put in your sub-grantee information. You hit the button, it'll take you to the sub-grantee form. There's a button for your EPIC outcomes tool. There's a button for your sub-recipient information and for your operational standards answers. And then each program has its own button. And you'll notice on the right-hand side, everything is listed with incomplete next to it. That won't change to complete until it's complete. So that tells you if you've skipped a box or whatever, you know to go back and look at it again. Sean has written very good general instructions. Please read them before you start. Moving on to page 2 are a list of the required documents. And we sent this out through the gatekeeper about a week ago, I think. This is the same. So we sent it out early so that you could start gathering up information. If you have that done, you're welcome to send it to the gatekeeper in one package so that Colleen can handle it as one package at any time. You don't need to wait till you're working on your application. Or you can send it back in with your application. So it's up to you. Then you'll see section 3 is your agency identification form. So that's where you put your subgrantee information. Section 4 is your subrecipient identification. And I think this will be pretty self-explanatory. The part right down the middle is where you check if this subgrant, what funding source this subgrantee is going to receive, or sources. And then we've added a question on the left-hand side. What, if any, culturally specific population does the subgrantee serve? Subrecipient serve. We added this because we've been asked that question in the past. And we've had to go through every single work plan application to get that information. So we're putting it here, and we'll have it if anybody asks us again. Are you okay? Any questions so far? Okay. And Sean has again given you instructions. In section 5, yesterday, Christy and Mariah talked about the MGA operational standards. There are standards that we've set for administrative activities. There's standards for the fiscal activities, which you heard described this morning. There are standards for the homeless services section. The administrative and the fiscal standards apply to homeless services and energy and weatherization. Homeless Services has developed their operational standards. Energy and weatherization have not. So we've taken those out of the big policy and put them in here. And if anything changes in this application before it becomes final, it will be this, I think. We will try to tighten this up, ask more specific questions, get a better idea that way about your plans for this money. Section 6 is the EPIC Outcomes Tool. So this should look familiar. There are the 2 performance measures that you're used to. And Sean's pointing them out. There's a box that you can hardly see from where we are for each of those. Those remain mandatory performance measures. You'll report on those. And then remember the EPIC card is the EPIC. So there's 4 categories. We want you to pick one thing to measure in each of those categories. Everything is listed here with a box next to it. So you can decide what you want to track and make your selections for all 4 categories. You can do that now. you know, have discussions with your staff and determine what you want to track. We don't want this to be the only thing you look at. We want you to look at all of these performance issues, but only report back to us on one for each section. The reason that we've added this is a change in philosophy. We've always stressed that we need your data so that we have outcomes. How many households did we serve? What's the racial breakdown? What's the income? That doesn't tell us what happened to those people. It doesn't tell us if you were successful in keeping them stabilized in their housing. It just tells us that you put money out for them. So the new philosophy is that we want to focus on lasting outcomes. What uses of the money are getting the best results. Have that kind of information available for analysis. So we still want the data. We always want good data. It's still going to be used, but it will be used more to know, is this working? Is this not working? How are you using your money? And in the next biennium, since this is setting your baseline for these 4 criteria that you're picking, in the next biennium, you will have the opportunity to say, okay, this was my baseline, this is what I did last biennium. I'm going to improve that by 5%, or whatever you want to say. You can set your own goals for the next biennium. You can say, oh, okay, I did pretty good on that one. I think that I'll move on to the next one. And that'll be my goal for this biennium. Or I can do both of those. So you can pick 2 goals for the next biennium. So that's our hope for using this as a tool to help us have the best outcome for the use of our funds. Then we move into the programs. Section 7 is the EHA DIRT program. And just going down it on the left-hand side, are you applying for EHA DIRT? Say yes or no. What services are you going to provide with this money? And it's just boxes. You check the boxes for the services you'll provide. And then below that, what target populations will you be serving? And a question, why has your agency selected this target population or these populations? Then on the right-hand side is the new stuff. Each service component that you checked on the left-hand side should be noted on the right-hand side, and those are all drop-down boxes, so you just pick. Then there's a column for the number of households that you think you'll serve with that money. And then the next 2 columns are the percentage of the budget that you, the subgrantee, will keep, and the percentage of the budget that you will pass on to your subrecipients. And those 2 columns should equal 100%. There's also some buttons right under that. And so this is where, if you were going to do acquisition or rehab with your EHA money, this is where you would find those forms. So there's a rehab conversion form, there's an acquisition form. Your EHA spend down form, which you see on your paper, will be a button. So that's, you're gonna have to hit a button to get that to come up. And then going down to the spend down projections, this is what Caleb was talking about when he was saying that we would ask you to tell us your spending per quarter. And this is annual. Even though it's a biennial amount of money, and it's going to be provided to you half and half. And so the spend down projection is annual. So the standardized percentage is the first part that you see there that Caleb was talking about, where your bottom line is that you've spent this much money in these quarters. This has been added to the MTA contract. And then the next part is the time-bound percentage. And that's where you write if your spending is going to be something different than the quarterly standard. And you see that there's room to write for year 1 and room to write for year 2. So you're writing that as of September 30th, you'll think you'll have spent 10% of your money. And as of December 31, you'll think you'll spend 50% of your money because you're funding shelters. And as of March 31, you'll spend like 80% because of all your shelter activity. And so then your last percentage, my date is wrong, it should be May 30th, 31st. You would have your last percentage. And then there's a box below that. If your proposed spending rate is different than the standard rate, tell us why. So you just need to say, it's different because I'm going to fund 3 shelters during the winter and that's where all my money's going. That's all you need to do. Then in Opus will have 2 columns added to it. One will be the standard rate. The other will be your projected rate. And we'll have to enter that into Opus. And then Opus will do the calculation for that quarter. Have you met the standard rate? Yes or no. Have you met your time-bound rate? Yes or no. And depending on those answers, you may get an email or not. And we'll be looking at all of that too on a quarterly basis. And what happens then if you aren't meeting either of those standards is that we'll probably have a conversation with you about why and see if there's some technical assistance that would be beneficial to you or something else that we could do that would help you spend your money. Any questions on that? Yeah.
So we have a time-bound percentages that are higher than the minimum? Oh.
If your time-bound percentages are higher than the minimum, and you're not meeting those, but you are hitting the minimum, do you get the email?
No.
Okay.
If you meet one of the 2, you're fine. If you don't meet either one, then you get the email. Any other questions? Okay. Now, this is the really good part. It is. Everything all of this and the bottom part that's not showing up here. Go back to 7. You are in 7. The spend out, I'm sorry. So the service component, number of households, that group, and the spend down page, we don't want you to send that in with your work plan application. We want you to send it in when we know how much your allocation is going to be. So your work plan application will just be the part on the top left-hand side. And that will be true for every funding source. Paula?
Add to the capacity.
Okay.
Side, but there's a list, I believe, of how many people are going to be involved in what percentage of their time. But that will really be based on what the true budget is.
It could be, yes. So when we're in the middle of June and the legislature has approved our budget, we can start figuring out the allocations. We will send you your allocation totals and we'll send this back out and you can examine what you had projected and we'll have it possible that you can add or subtract or update or whatever it is that you need to do. We've determined, and I'm sure you all, Sheila?
I was just going to ask the question if the, I just wanted to ask the question, so if they are completing the right side and the spend down after allocation, is it going to show up as being complete on that first page?
Sean?
I can make it so that it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. Good question, thank you. But that's what we need. We need all these little what ifs. Oh, yes, Connor.
On your spend down page, it said total must equal 100%. Yes, the total must equal 100%, but I'm confused. Oh, okay. So I'm confused if it's supposed to actually equal 100%, because if you're entering,
Yeah, it should equal 90, right?
well, or should it, because are you saying how much you spend each quarter, or is it cumulative?
Cumulative. So by the end of May, you are supposed to have spent 90%.
Right, but so if you're doing 10, 25, 50, 90, that obviously more than 100%.
You're right.
So.
Which is probably okay. I mean, we can make it more or less. If it's less, then it's red and blinking and stuff. So,
Naughty list.
yeah, really the naughty list. Any other questions? What we determined, and I'm sure that you have felt this often, is that we ask you to provide us a budget. You don't know, we don't know the number, the amount of your allocation. What you send back to us are bogus numbers. We know they're bogus numbers. So why are we doing that? So, and then the other questions really are dependent upon how much money you get, the number of households that you're going to serve, the number of sub-recipients that you will have. All of that information depends on what your funding is. So we're just going to do that later when you know your dollars. Anybody else want to make a comment about that?
Are you going to draw down based on like PHA just has having a program, or is it going to be drawn down by the target?
Not by the target, by your RFOs.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Does that question need to be repeated?
What?
Does that question need to be
Oh,
repeated?
Ginger's question was, are the funds going to be drawn down by the percentages that you put up there, or are they going to be drawn down by your actual requests for funds?
But
And the answer-
by the target, so for example, you'll draw down, say you put in rapid rehousing or homeschooling.
Yeah.
You're going to draw down categorically.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
we are. We are. I don't think the categories will change. I wanted a change, and everybody told me I couldn't. So, So I think the categories will remain the same. And for ESG, the categories have to remain the same. So I'm sorry, I tried to make it easier and I couldn't.
But Vicki,
Yeah,
The categories will have to change for EHA. They'll have to, because there is no way you can put capacity building expenses in the categories that are already identified. There's just no way.
oh, the categories on here, the service
To draw
component?
down our funds, we have to say it's, what is it, rapid rehousing?
Right.
And all that. There is, and the only reason I know this is because we got in a little bit of trouble at our monitoring visit because we paid for a staff person to go to a ROC meeting and charge that expense. And there was not a simple program expense or capacity. And
Right.
we couldn't tie it to a service to a client. So there has to be something to identify, if you're gonna allow us, which is great, to use EHA dollars for capacity building, you're gonna have to have a capacity building line item.
Well, there is a line item, but it's, capacity building has a pretty specific purpose. It has a use, which we will get to.
Okay.
So I think when you come up with questions like your staff person's travel, that's where you need to talk to Rosaria or me or Melody. And we will all call Monica and ask her. Yeah. I'm sorry, Paula, you're puzzled and I can't answer it. Okay, all right. Forgot where it was. Okay, so yeah, the next screen is the community capacity building screen. And in the dialog box at the top, it does define community capacity building. Designed to provide activities that will result in an increased capacity of the CAA's community, not the CAA, the CAA's community, to provide additional services and access to shelter and transitional housing, not permanent housing, that will come out of there, to homeless and at risk of homeless clients. So it's for you to take a look at what your community has to offer. Maybe you don't have any shelter for youth and you need one. The capacity building piece might provide you with funding so that you can create a consortium of service providers to work on that issue. It's things that will build your community's ability to help the homeless people that are in it.
Yeah, we talked about with, the new work coming out, the rollout of the Epic Outcomes tool and having that C category, the capacity in the community, that we really want to focus the use of these capacity building funds on those efforts so that can support your staff efforts to achieve the performance measures that are attached under that C category.
I think we're going to have to examine that because this community capacity building category has been around for a couple bienniums, and it was not developed for that use.
I know Sheila has looked into that, and we did have some discussion about it, so it actually does fit pretty well with the word defined.
But that wasn't the purpose of it, so that would be a decision we'd have to make. So we'll talk about that. Erica?
Yeah, and another thing that's been brought up before about the community capacity building is the point-in-time homeless counts don't quite exactly fit the wording on here, but there's not really any other way, if people are having...
There's not really any other way to fund the homeless counts if people are having to use their state funding to help with that effort.
It does fit. It's a long way around because your PIT count totals, HUD uses those to determine how much money you will be eligible, your community will be eligible for. So the PIT count really is the foundation of your COC funding.
All right, well, as long as you're seeing it that way.
Yes, I'm seeing it that way. We've had that discussion.
And I just wanted to point out too, that the release of the manual, which will happen next week, also has a community capacity building section in it. And it gives examples of types of things that would apply. And so the work that is being done with the EPIC tool will fit into here, but it also has, so specifically to your point in time, it's purchase of incentives to attract unsheltered persons to participate in the point in time count. So it does talk about, like some other options of that capacity building. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. When this comes out next week, make sure that you're taking a look at it, and if you have any questions, you can let us know.
I think that whole thing deserves a discussion in our office, and so we'll work that out, come up with something definite, and let you know. The community capacity building has been squishy, all the time we've had it. It hasn't been well defined. We've received all sorts of requests for its usage. We've tried to drill down with it, but with the oncoming of the EPIC tool and in discussions, I think we've still got work to do.
As flexible as you can keep it, I think is the message you're getting from us.
Okay, all right, thanks. So if you want to do community capacity and use that funding as a funding source, this is your application for that money. So we need to know as detailed as you can give us what your plan is, what your vision is, where the funds will be used, what they'll pay for. This can't be just an idea. This has to be developed at least enough so that we know that it's a viable use of the funding. Okay, moving on. The next section is the budget for the community capacity. Because that is your application for it.
I have a question on that. Is there more than one?
Is there the ability to fill out more than one of these forms? Because you talk about program cost and program specifics, like if you had more than one community capacity building project?
Certainly.
Are there more than one form?
Oh, well, what, Sean?
Yeah,
Copy?
all you'll have to do, if you have multiple community capacity projects or say multiple acquisition or rehab projects, fill out essentially one form for each project. You'll just click Save New Entry when you're done filling it out, and then if you want to enter a new one in, just do the same thing. And you can enter 1 million, well maybe not 1 million, but you can enter as many as you want.
Do you want to read that many is the question.
Yeah, those all go to Sean. Okay, did everybody understand that? Okay. So then moving on to section 9, the acquisition form and instructions. This is a little itty bitty form. All we want you to do is tell us what you want to acquire, what you're going to use it for, where it's located, what funding, the amount of funding that you need for it. Because when you send this back to us, we are going to send you an application packet where you will give us the rest of the information. Okay. And
So that's what happens if you fill out 1 million.
yeah, really. The real estate application packet is for acquisitions and/or rehab conversion. And it's kind of like the question with the community capacity. You would need to fill out one application for each activity that you're doing. If you're going to rehab an existing shelter and you're going to purchase a building to be used for shelter, that's 2 applications that you need to send in. The real estate application is separate from the MGA. Your MGA will be approved even if your application is still, your real estate application is still in process. What we do is withhold that amount of funding that you've said you're going to need for that project. We just don't allocate it until your project is approved. And there are line items on Opus for acquisition and for rehab. So when it does get funded, it would go into those the money would go into those line items. And that's where you would pull it from. Everybody okay with that? Okay. So then the next page, section 10 is the rehab and conversion page. Again, all we want from you is the bare minimum information. And we will send you the packet to get more information. Next is EHA vets. And the rest of this, I don't think we need to really go through because, well, maybe so. So this is the same thing. You're only going to fill out the top part of that. The rest of it you won't see. You'll fill out the services that you're going to provide with EHA vets money. Next is ERA, same thing, just fill out the services piece. ESG. ESG has a component that's not used very often. It can pay for rehab or conversion. And of course, being ESG, there are some stipulations to it, but it can be used for that. And so that's what the bottom of that page is. Same thing, you just send in a paragraph and we'll take it from there. Then ESG also has written standards. It's on the section 15. We sent those out to you when we sent the list of documents to be returned. So you can use the list or you can use this. Either way, it just needs to be returned either prior to or with your work plan application. If you check the box that you're going to use your own written standards, one that your agency has developed, we want you to send us in that as an attachment. So for every box where you say, we're doing our own thing, that's fine. Just send us in what that is. And if you need to choose between OHCS's standards, which are in your ESG manual, or your continuums standards, I think HUD prefers that you use your continuums standards, but you'll need to indicate, check the box, which one you are using. HSP, yeah. Yeah. Who said that? Dina. Okay.
So on this list of written standards for ESG, so for example, if you're not intending to use ESG for street outreach, do we check anything? Should there be a NA box?
But what if you change your mind?
Okay.
Kelly?
So when I'm looking at the ESG local government certification, and it talks about, and it's saying, I hereby approve the following emergency shelter activities. Okay, since I don't have shelter in part, and I have to get approval of ESG in both communities from local governments, and I'm looking at all the lists of the activities list, the emergency shelter activities.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
I know. This question has come up before. This is what is in the HUD rule for ESG.
Right.
Local government certification for shelters.
But it didn't, previously it did not list shelter activity. It listed
services to homeless, because we would go in front
Okay.
of the commissioners. They would approve it under that condition, but if it said shelter activities, I'm gonna come up against a wall.
Okay. We've discussed it, probably last biennium. And we determined that it applied to all of the funding that all the services you'll be doing with this funding.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
just list that.
I think that we'll change the wording there to make it more inclusive. Okay. Okay, HSP, all right. There are a few questions for you to answer for HSP. And then there is section 19 is your HSP MOE form. This is just for in-kind, Sheila?
Yes.
You only fill out this form if you are going to claim in-kind activity for your MOE requirement. If it's all cash, right, you don't need to fill out the form. Okay. Okay. Next is home TBA.
Maybe can I just go back one more? There's also another tab for HSP that covers the collaboration. And that is the collaboration plan, and we are asking that you take the plan that you had for the expansion money and flesh it out a little bit more. We're asking for some more specific questions, and so we kind of want you to sit down with your DHS partner and figure out kind of the answers to some of these things, contingency plans and that type of thing that we have seen that have been barriers in the effective distribution of the expansion money. So we're asking you to flesh that out a little bit more and send it back in. So that's what all of that is.
Okay. That's on, in section 17 at the bottom of the page is the request for that. Applicants are required to submit a collaboration plan with your work plan. See it?
Oh, right.
Okay, any questions for Sheila about that? Okay. And you reminded me, I want to go back to ESG. Match. ESG section 13, about a third of the way down the page, you need to list your match sources. And it says if you cannot meet the match requirement of 100%, you must request a waiver. To discuss a waiver with the ESG program analyst, mark this box. So if you don't think that you're going to be able to report 100% match for ESG, you mark the box. And then we will contact you to see if you need a waiver. We'll provide you with the waiver and you send it back to us. And then HSP's got the same kind of deal. I don't know where it is. Do you see it? Oh, right there, okay. Same thing. You list your MOE, and there's the same sentence. If you can't provide 100% MOE, check the box, and we'll contact you. Sheila will contact you. Because Sheila knows 1,000% more about this program than I do. Any questions about any of that? Okay. Then section 20, we did, OTBA. 21, LERF, you're only going to do the services piece on LERF. Chat, same thing. Then there will be other pieces to the SHAP, because there will be forms for acquisition and for rehab that will pretty much mirror the ones for EHA. Probably a little bit different format because SHAP can't do transitional housing. So, and SHAP won't do community capacity building. So it will just be the two small forms for acquisition and rehab conversion. And then you submit it to us. And we'll look at it and either send it back to you with questions or we'll approve it. At which point Colleen will send the signature page to you for signature. And you send it back and our director will sign it. And you're done. Now, to correct it, look at the back page.
I did.
Oh, yeah.
I was just wondering, when I opened the document up, I was having some formatting issues, and so I was wondering if anybody else experienced that, or if that was just something I had to take.
Don't worry about it,
Okay.
because it's a draft. You're not going to enter anything.
I want to provide that feedback.
Okay.
It should all be squared away when the final comes out.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so the back page is how you correct stuff, right?
Yes.
Okay. If you see down at the bottom of the grid are your tabs. So you go there to correct something. Can you give us an example?
Yeah, well, this doesn't work. So, yeah, if you enter subrecipient information, you got. So yeah, if you enter your subrecipient information, you decide you're not going to use that subrecipient, or they update their phone number, email address, whatever it is. Just come back in. You click on the button above whatever section it is. It'll open a form that'll pull up the information for your entries, and you can make whatever edits you need within that entry. Click Save Updated Record. It won't do that, and it'll update your record, and you'll be able to see that. You'll be able to see that in the display of wherever that information is at. And so that's how you can navigate through and make sure that everything is correct order before you send it in.
If you forget about this and you try to go back to the original page, will it take your edits?
Some of them will, some of them won't.
Okay.
So
it's not a fail-safe?
not necessarily, no.
Okay. So you just have to remember to do all your corrections on the review tab. Are you laughing at me? Who's laughing at me?
We're laughing with you.
Okay. All right. I think that's it. Anything else? Yeah.
Just looking at this page, does that mean there's only room for 8 subrecipients?
No, put in
Okay,
room
okay.
for, I don't know,
A million.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Does it sound okay?
Yeah.
Sound better? Yeah. We're working on the MGA agreement, the contract, the exhibits. We've done a lot to improve the appearance of the exhibits that are the program elements. There's like 22 of them. and each one was like 3 pages, and it was pretty awful. So now it's down to like 18 pages, which is good, yeah. We really are trying to make it as easy on you as we possibly can. If you have any other, if you see anything, that you think we could change, that would still provide us with what we need, but be easier or more presentable, please let us know. We are open for suggestions. Yes.
Are you anticipating allocating innovative SHAP dollars in a different line item for shelter capacity for rural communities?
We may not have those, I call them the weird little funding resources. We may not have them. We won't know probably until we're into the next biennium, if we have any of that money available. That money came from our department's admin that we didn't spend. And so we put it out for your use.
Okay,
so we won't
if I
know.
could just put in a plug to not do that to us, because, we got ours in January.
Yeah.
And we had 6 months to create
Yeah,
this capacity program.
Right.
And that doesn't give us a lot of time, so I'm just hoping that we could hold your department to the same spend rate as you do us, and that you, within the first biennium, you either
Good
give up
point.
some of that money ahead of time and let us do some real planning.
yeah, good point. But we really don't know what we'll have available other than the regular allocations.
Yes, what about CSBG?
Leanne? What's your question about CSBG?
Well, just I've never done this before, so what's the process for CSBG?
Okay, you will receive a separate work plan application for CSBG.
And Sean's working on that one for me currently. I'm gonna try to get that out.
Yeah, we'll try to have the same kind of formatting.
Yeah, trying to keep it similar so that no surprises.
Right.
Mine's not as long.
That was a good question.
Jackie, you and I.
Yes,
We'll
sounds
just
good.
take care.
Okay,
All right.
great, Leanne.
Okay. Anything else? Great. Right. Thank you very much. I appreciate your
Thank you.
attention.